I had one video that failed to upload, and like what I was talking about in that video is that you if you take like if you take the most deadly things like certain deadly things like maybe a tiger or just really deadly things or even like I almost don't want to corrupt this video by referencing this, but I'll go ahead and say like you take like Jeffrey Dahmer, your killers like Jeffrey Dahmer. According to the YouTuber, I think his name is the Game Spitter. He was saying that some of these killers like that, like these killers that have been killing people for a long time and somewhat succeeding at that, they don't necessarily have to do too many things differently, and they simply do what works, and it's very deadly and it's very effective, and it doesn't have to be more or less than what works to be deadly and effective and fatal and profound for the most wicked of things. You could maybe say that a lot of the best things are like that too, where things that are really outstanding, they don't have to necessarily, you don't have to do too many different things with the wheel to make the wheel do all the different things that a wheel can do. But it'd be similar like with like killing and even oppression. So if you think about like how different horrible, unfathomable, but also large scale, almost industrial murder, mayhem, genocide has been waged on different people. Like you take the people that I come from in Africa, the Ishi Herero. I think Ishi means people and Herero. Oh no, sorry, Ova Herero. Ova means people and Herero is the people, the Herero people, and then also the Nama people. They suffered a genocide order from I think it had been the nation state of Prussia that became Germany, and I think they were Germany at that point. And there was a general there was conflict with the Herero people over the cattle because they had a deep relationship to the cattle, very similar to the Native American people relationship to the buffalo, if any different at all. Just maybe their way of living next to the cattle would have been different than the buffalo because maybe the buffalo are more flighty and have different personality than cattle. But just their proximity to the cattle and the buffalo, and the intimacy and the reciprocity and respect and support and sustenance that amounted to life itself was very similar and parallel to my taste as a superficial non-historian, but also a member of the Overhead myself, and a lover of Native American people in the United States, as some of my best friends in life have been Native American, and some of the people who really inspired me. And I've had some superficial exposure to the Native American people growing up in the Southwest around many friends, close friends who are Native American, but and a really outstanding friend as an adult who's also Native American. But I'm actually humbled to think about some of those people that I've known who are Native American, and I also had a beautiful female coworker who inspired me, who is Native American. But but I'm not an expert by any means on this subject. But the relationship between between the animals, the land, the animals, and the people, as maybe not distinguishable one from the other, but different expressions of the same. I can appreciate that as a parallel between them, but also these people suffered horrible atrocities. And like with my people, the Overhead Edo, there had been contention over the cattle, and then that amounted to you could probably say it may not have already been like it, so the I can imagine that aesthetics around diet and taking of cattle, that is when and how much to slaughter, the value in decision making about that would have been very different from a Eurocentric standpoint of value to an Afrocentric standpoint of value as the Herero people were existing. And I can imagine that might have been similar between the Native American people, the Buffalo, and the European settlers, is that some of the approach to consumption may have informed the contention. I would imagine that, but it came to a head like with the Overhead Edo people, and then a vicious general from Germany named von Trotha was introduced and showed up on the now Namibia, but then German Southwest African soil. Africa was split up almost like a pie in colonialism, and different European nations, they agreed upon which areas of Africa they would take to themselves and gentrify, for lack of a better word. And so that you would have like the British, the French, the Dutch, the Portuguese, and then the German. But the German came into it later, because actually I think the German nation came into being later than those other nations, because it had been Prussia before that, and you had sophisticated like interfighting going on in that region of Prussia. I don't know the full history of that, but I just know that what we know of as Germany is more of a later iteration of a nation. But then also their experience and expansion of colonialism is also a little bit later. So I think that where my people come from, there's rugged. It's a very rugged terrain, desert par excellence, and it's near the ocean. Like you get wind from the south, the Antarctica, but by the ocean there it's very desolate. In Namibia, the Namib Desert is one of your larger deserts, but it's almost uninhabitable and very desolate. But it's actually a miracle that the people could exist there as long as they did, and thrive and prosper. But it impacted the way that colonialism affected that region, I think, because of the challenges that were presented by the land. That might be why it was still available to be colonized by the time that Germany got around to colonizing. But my father said that Germany was more of like a it was kind of like a like sometimes when people, so like you take some, you imagine a prison, right? Like people that have been doing prison for a long time. A prison that's been around for a round time, it might be a little bit more humane than a new prison because they know what they're doing with that prison. But then you get someone that's an upstart to a prison, an upstart to oppression, an upstart to colonialism, and it might be a little bit brutal because they're not as used to it. It's kind of like new money. Like sometimes new people new to wealth might be more mean spirited than people who are used to wealth. I would think so. So some of the brutality of the experience of German colonialism, it might have been unique from the fact that it was a newer nation and not as experienced with colonialism. But it amounted to that when Van Trota arrived, he just simply said, exterminate them. That was his not fight, exterminate, genocide. So they would chase men, women, and children into the desert, towards like the eastern part of Africa, knowing that they couldn't survive that stretch of the desert. So it was either run back to bullets, or run out to dehydration. That is genocide. Man, woman, and children, no prisoners, no surrender, is what our people experienced. But it amounted to, like, I think at least like 40, 60, or 80,000 lost in the strictest terms. Not talking about the aftermath, but just in terms of the hard numbers, which can be arbitrary. And that might be found in something called the Blue Book, which is a German documentation of its own atrocity that's preserved. And I've said in another video that some of my family members appear in that book. I had my paternal grandmother's paternal grandfather was a warrior named Daniel Kavedenba. According to my father, that was valiant in putting resistance. And then he had a son named Samuel, and I think Samuel was a reverend in that area. He was converted to Christianity, and he was consulted for some of the statistics in that Blue Book, according to my father. But what I meant to say is that what would be significant, and then I wanted a little bit touch upon like what I can imagine was experienced in Southeast Asia leading up to the conflict in Vietnam, that was as brutal of an episode in the human experience as I think what the Native Americans experienced, and what our people experienced. Not to ever compare or tally or contrast human suffering, but just to say that the scope of pain and suffering would be similar, I would imagine, in Asia, no less than Southeast Asia and Africa and the Americas. But within all that, the mechanics that would be killing people would be the economic displacement and disenfranchisement first and foremost. But then on top of that would be the what was I going to say? Dang, what was I going to say with that one? So I think that there's a couple things that are very effective techniques that are useful in displacing, disfranchising, and then murdering people. One is the economic displacement and inequity that we still suffer to this day. But another one is what, according to Tashik Bey, is connotative linguistics. That is, some people would appreciate that as slang and a metaphor. That's not what I'm referring to as connotative linguistics. I'm referring to shades and inflections of terms, words, and ideas, nuances that make people fail to grasp concepts and false concepts, that is lies. So inequity and lies is what is effective in killing an entire people, is what I meant to say.